Chapter 2. The Dimension of Victory. More than a few men have seen history as meaningless frustration. Poetry giving vent to this mood has repeatedly struck a chord in many men who respond to Macbeth's bitter words, quote, "Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." End quote. Macbeth, Act 5, Scene 5. In this perspective, man's destiny is death and frustration, and life's only meaning is the grim mockery of witches. Matthew Arnold in Dover Beach concluded that, quote, "The world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night." End quote. T.S. Eliot stated it more bluntly in The Hollow Men. "This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper." In such a perspective, history not only lacks victory, it also lacks meaning. But man cannot live without meaning. Nothing is more destructive of man than meaningless activity and living. Accordingly, those who have agreed that life and history are meaningless must either in effect commit suicide, physically or spiritually, or else attempt to force a meaning and a victory onto history. Man's chosen instrument in this attempt to force purpose and victory onto history is science. Science is seen as control and prediction, and by means of science, man must control history and make it totally predictable. History must be reduced to a province of science. History must become a laboratory in which man is experimented on for the purpose of making a meaningless history purposeful. The purpose is to be derived from the scientific thought of the sociological planners. In this perspective, history is a social science, and the meaning of history as social science is simply that society and societal relations are a province of science and derive their meaning and content from scientific control and prediction. In this perspective, God has no part in history. Man makes history. It is not God's creation, for God is a mythical projection of man's mind. History as a social science is thus radically opposed to the biblical faith that history is God's handiwork. The history textbooks of our day, as well as most historical research, approach history as a social science. As a result, they are implicitly anti-Christian, and dependence upon them lays down an unconscious and deep foundation of anti-Christian presuppositions. History as man's scientific creation means history totally controlled by the scientific elite. Since God's predestination is ruled out, man's predestination or total planning must take its place. History, which for Orthodox Christianity is closely linked to theology, now becomes an associate of sociology. The purpose of history ceases to be understanding. It becomes an instrument of control. Quote, "The children of the state," end quote, "are indoctrinated in this reinterpreted history in order to make them amenable to the controls of today and tomorrow, to the purposes of the socialist state." The children of God, however, are taught that history has as its mainstream the messianic purpose of Jesus Christ. In Rendell's words, quote, "It is the main tide of history. All others are tributary. The messianic purpose holds together the entire fabric of history, integrating all things in Christ." End quote. Non-Christian religions lack this messianic purpose. The pagan nature mythologies saw history as, quote, "endlessly recurring cycles of events," end quote, Quote, "These mythical heroes and goddesses symbolize processes of nature and in particular the natural cycles of the seasons. Transferred as a thought form to collective human experience, they also express mythologically the rise and decline of successive generations as the ultimate norm of human history. So expressed, history moves onward by a sort of natural necessity in an endless chain of perpetually repeated events, having no fixed point of beginning and leading up to no conclusive ending." End quote. In the pagan perspective, man is a creature of nature, not of God, and man is therefore to be understood in terms of nature. But in the biblical perspective, man is God's creation, directly related to God, and set over the world of nature rather than under it. Man cannot be reduced to a natural process, nor his history to a social science. History as a social science is concerned with escaping the defeat echoed by the poets, instead of being, quote, "a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing," end quote. Life and history as a social science are to be made into victory by means of total control and prediction. This means socialism, scientific socialism, and the purpose of socialism is to give a dimension of victory to history. An important factor in its success is the fact that Christian eschatology has increasingly surrendered the dimension of victory and emphasized the dimension of tribulation as the essence of the future. But this is scarcely the biblical view, by no means the temper of Scripture nor of biblical theologians in the great ages of the faith. St. Paul, faced with the trials of the saints, declared, "What shall we say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us?" Romans 8:31. The sovereignty of God over history is emphatically the biblical view. God predestines, creates, and totally governs all history. Very early in his struggle with Rome, Martin Luther observed, quote, "God alone is in this business. We are seized so that I see we are acted upon rather than act." End quote. Luther thus saw history as the work of God. He stood in biblical tradition as upheld by Augustine and very soon by Calvin also. This theocentric perspective concerning history separates him from modern historiography. Moreover, as Headley has observed, quote, "This difference is not limited to the problem of causation, but appears in its two immediate implications, that every action derived from God gives unity and meaning to history, and secondly, because man is the instrument of God, one is denied the luxury of being a spectator. Man is constantly being acted upon and serves as a cooperator in this action. This unbroken activity of God pushes man into an unbroken cooperation in history. In such a situation, there can be no dead history and no flight from history." End quote. It was this triumphant faith which Luther expressed in his hymn, quote, "A mighty fortress is our God, and though this world with devils filled should threaten to undo us, we will not fear, for God hath willed his truth to triumph through us." It was this strong sense of victory which enabled the early church to withstand fearful persecution and to triumph. This dimension of victory was basic also to the Reformation and to American Puritanism. Today, however, vast segments of the church have joined the enemy and preach the gospel according to Caesar, and too often those who profess a faith in Christ think in terms of defeat and the retreat of the church before evil, rather than a decree and mandate of victory. The retreat of the Christian church is first of all a retreat from faith. History has been surrendered to the devil because the faith has been either surrendered or compromised. What are some of the basic premises of a biblical philosophy of history? Before we can restore the dimension of victory, we must restore the faith that assures victory. First of all, in the biblical perspective, history is the handiwork of God because the whole universe is his creation. History cannot be downgraded or dismissed as illusion. Non-Christian philosophies inevitably find time in history a problem. Monism reduces all being to one, It emphasizes the unity and oneness of being, and it therefore downgrades and minimizes the meaning of particularity, of individuals, and of history, which is the story of the struggles of particulars rather than a demonstration of the unity of being. Monism, moreover, tends steadily to minimize the world of matter. In Indian thought, it is the world of Maya, of illusion. Maya is the veil covering reality, the experience of manifoldness when only the one is real. End quote. Western monism, not as far developed as Eastern, has not yet reduced the world of particulars to Maya, but it is well on its way. The state is the reality, and the individual is increasingly only real as a member of the state. As Eby and Arrowood summarise Dewey's perspective, quote, an individual cannot be regarded, according to Dr. Dewey, as a being apart from society, end quote. Our society and world are becoming increasingly monistic, and monism means the triumph of the one, of the state, or the unity of being, but this requires the defeat and submersion of the many, of the individual, and of the historical process. Marxist monism thus sees victory as the end of history and the beginning of post-historical man, although Marxism is in origin dialectical. Dualism offers no better hope of victory. For dualism, the world is in perpetual tension or conflict between two hostile forces, the good God and the evil God, between light and dark, spirit and matter, the noumenal and the phenomenal, and man is thus assured of continuous conflict without victory, plus the degradation of the material world and of history. Dualism has been a continuing undercurrent in Western thought, but there has also been a continuing revolt against the implications of dualism and of monism as well. The attempt to avoid these twin evils of dualism and monism is dialecticism. Dialectical philosophy seeks to avoid these two evils, dualism and monism, and it affirms two apparently irreconcilable concepts without resolving their tension. Dialectical thought, as a result, breaks down as one aspect triumphs over the other and either falls into monism, dualism, or atomism. In the biblical perspective, the doctrine of the Trinity gives equal ultimacy to the one and the many, so that the hopeless alternatives of dualism and monism are both avoided. History is neither illusion nor frustration, but the outworking of God's eternal decree. Biblical doctrine is not formulated in abstraction as in monistic religions. It is revealed in history and in writing is woven into the context of the history of God's covenant with man. The Old Testament is a long record of such history, and the New Testament also. The doctrines expounded in the epistles are not stated in abstraction, but in terms of the realities of heresies, church problems, the revelation of Jesus Christ, and the destiny of God's elect people. History is important precisely because it is totally meaningful because of God's eternal decree and act of creation. The Council of Jerusalem declared, quote, known unto God are all his works from the beginning of the world, end quote, Acts 15:18. History is in the hands neither of chaos nor of the social scientist, but in the hands of the sovereign and triune God. Any adherence to chance or to monism and dualism, or dialecticism as well, reduces history to frustration and gives no hope except the hopelessly totalitarian answer of social science. The eternal decree of the triune God alone assures meaning and victory for life and history. A second aspect of the faith which assures victory is a sound doctrine of the resurrection. From more than a few philosophical and religious perspectives, the resurrection is foolishness. The goal of being and of man is seen as a transcending of the material for the spiritual. Both monism and dualism share this perspective. The realm of spirit is the higher realm, the true and good realm, whereas matter represents a lower world, evil, and an aspect of life which man must overcome and transcend. Such a view is not biblical. Both man's body and soul were created wholly good by God, and both alike are fallen and in need of the redemptive work of Jesus Christ. It is not the spirit which is good as against matter as evil, but man who is totally depraved by his fall into sin and totally saved by the work of Jesus Christ. The purpose of biblical history is to trace the victory of Jesus Christ. That victory is not merely spiritual, it is also historical. Creation, man, and man's body all move in terms of a glorious destiny for which the whole creation groans and travails as it awaits the fullness of that glorious liberty of the sons of God, Romans 8:18-23. The victory is historical and eschatological, and it is not the rejection of creation, but its fulfillment. This victory was set forth in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who destroyed the power of sin and death and emerged victorious from the grave. As St. Paul emphasized in 1 Corinthians 15, this victory is the victory of all believers. Christ is the first fruit, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega of the life of the saints. Had Christ merely arisen as a spirit from the grave, it would have signified his lordship over the world of spirit and his surrender of matter and history. But by his physical resurrection, by his rising again in the same body with which he was crucified, he set forth his lordship over creation and over history. The world of history will see Christ's triumph in the triumph of his saints, his church, and his kingdom. History will not end in tribulation and disaster. It will see the triumph of the people of God and the manifestation of Christian order from pole to pole before Christ comes again. The doctrine of the resurrection is thus a cornerstone of the biblical dimension of victory. The doctrine of the resurrection, however, does not last long in any church or philosophy which surrenders or compromises the doctrine of creation. Creationism asserts that the world is a creative act of the triune God who made it wholly good. Sin is a perversion of man and a definition of creation. The goal of the messianic purpose of history is the, quote, restitution of all things, end quote, Acts 3:21, their fulfillment in Jesus Christ, first in time, and then in eternity. The words of Schilder beautifully sum up this faith. Quote, the supper of the marriage of the Lamb, the feast of all the household of God with Christ before God, assures us that heaven does not turn its back upon history. The future glory of Christ will ever be seen as a result of his humiliation. Paul tells us in Philippians 2 that Christ was exalted because of the humiliation to which he had subjected himself, thus closely linking Christ's life upon earth with his life in heaven. In calling the Great Supper the Supper of the Lamb, heaven acknowledges the importance of history. The Lamb stands there as slain. That is to say, heaven never throughout all eternity abstracts Christ's exaltation, his standing, from his humiliation, his being slain. To the Lamb who wrought salvation for us by his blood will be given honour through all eternity. In that which is seen and said at the Great Supper, justice is done through all eternity to the fullness of God's work in history. In the Great Supper, the meaning of history becomes clear. The historical reality of Christ's death and resurrection, then, is held in remembrance eternally in heaven. History is thus shown to be wholly governed by the sovereignty of God, and we reject wholly the conception of Dante, who, in his poem, refers to the mythological river Lethe. Of this mythological river of the underworld, the dead must drink in order to forget the past. In his ascent through the heavenly spheres to the sun, the poet stops beside this river to rid himself of the oppressive memory of sin, by which he virtually meant that which is temporal, the relative, the historical. The poet would forget earth and all its aspects of time and space, for the higher the soul soars, the more foolish and insignificant the earth and all things earthly become. And only after crossing the river is Dante privileged to meet that strange procession, including a triumphal chariot escorted by the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures and the winged creatures, and surrounded by female figures who symbolize the church triumphant. And only after bathing once again in Lethe may Dante join the festal procession. Such mythical ideas are riddled with Neoplatonism. When the doors of heaven open, all historical life upon earth loses its worth, they say. History no longer has meaning. But contrary to this rejection of history, the Bible utters those beautiful words, quote, "the marriage supper of the Lamb," end quote. Those who have been called to this supper have not been bathed in lethe. On the contrary, they commemorate the centre of history. They receive a perspective of history from its beginning to its end, end quote. There is thus a dimension of victory in history. Jesus Christ. The alternative plan of victory is social science. This means the totalitarian socialist state, the world of George Orwell's 1984. For the Christian, this is rather the dimension of hell, not of victory. For the believer, quote, "this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith," end quote, 1 John 5:4.